Welcome back to On the Flip Side. My name is Adam Shawalker, your host. Today we're going to be reviewing the first Ministry record, 1983's With Sympathy. Ministry was founded in 1981 by Al Jourgensen. After a slew of singles such as Every Day is Halloween, he ended up getting a record deal with Arista Records, a label that would put out such synth-pop acts as like Depeche Mode. While being a far cry from their sound nowadays, Ministry's With Sympathy has its own place in their history as just their first record and their first foray into releasing music to a wider audience. The track listing here is as follows. Side 1 starts with Effigy, track 2 is Revenge, 3 is I Wanted to Tell Her, and 4 is Work for Love. Side 2 starts with track 5, Here We Go, track 6 is What'd He Say, track 7 is Say You're Sorry, and track 8, Should Have Known Better, and the final track is She's Got a Cause. We're going to listen to side 1 and come back at you on the flip side. Alrighty, we're back with side 1 of the record. First song is Effigy. First track on the record here is very much in line for a big 80s club hit. The sampled drum machine here with these synths really just primed this track to be like a major precursor to modern synthwave. This song is a very straightforward, dancey track with lots of really big reverbed out rhythms and this huge swinging sound that, really can't help but make you move. The second track on the record is Revenge. Synths, once again, absolutely lead this track through one of the strongest songs on this album, and one of the biggest hits off of this record as well. The chorus is incredibly strong and catchy. At this point in his career, Al Jourgensen is singing pretty much in this faked British accent that, while goofy, I think works really well on this track and pretty much on the entire album as a whole. The third track on the record is I Wanted to Tell Her. This song starts with a really funky, catchy bass line, accompanied by some like really jangly guitars that would fit right at home on like a Revolting Cocks record, one of Al Jourgensen's later projects. So you can really tell where a lot of these things are going to start to go off of this record alone. Al Jourgensen having been associated with so many different industrial acts, I mean like 1000 Homo DJs, Palehead, Revolting Cocks, PTP, Acid Horse, Ministry. All of these bands are pretty much coalesced with other bands that are notable in industrial, such as like KMFDM or Skinny Puppy or Ogre. Pretty much all of these bands would cross over, or at least would involve Al Jourgensen at some point or another in their careers. And you can tell just where like so many of these bands are getting their influences from, and they all come back. You can tell like these ideas are in their infancy on With Sympathy. This song I think really pulls the most influence from like funk as compared to a lot of the other tracks, which I mean are still very poppy, but this one has like a lot, just the bass line alone is really funky. I think this is really where on the album you can start to notice just sort of like the creative choices that start to differ from Al Jourgensen's own writing style. Al Jourgensen for a long time didn't really even like to acknowledge the existence of this record, as when he was with Arista Records, apparently he would work on the album and leave the studio, and by the time he came back in the morning or the next time he came to work on things would be moved around and changed. They'd get guest vocalists in to do stuff, and there was very little creative control on a lot of these songs and for a lot of segments of these tracks, and I think this is definitely a good example of that. However, this song is really good. I don't see any of the things that the label added as being something that would have been detrimental to the track. I don't think there's an original mix of this song that exists out there, but the one that we got I think is really excellent. Track 4 on the record is Work for Love. Just another heavy funk influence track to pull this side of the record together. This side A of this record so far has pretty much just been non-stop, really top-notch quality synth pop, loaded with memorable tracks, with no exception on this track here. Work for Love really plays off of Ministry's strong points at this portion of their career. I think that this side A of this album is just really loaded with just good songs. Despite some of the creative losses on Al Jourgensen's end, I do not think it's detrimental to this album. Everything on this album is just playing to the strengths of Ministry in 1983. That is side A of the record. We are going to listen to side 2 and come back to you on the flip side. Alrighty, we are back with side 2 of the record. Fifth track on the record is Here We Go. A really big wave of drum machine beats kicks off this song. Al is really hitting a lot of like great varied notes on this track. This track is a really good indicator for where the band would end up going on their next record, Twitch, with lots of like really abrasive segments getting some attention on this track that are a lot more in line with like traditional proto-industrial stuff here. This is definitely one of the stronger songs on this side of the record. I don't love this song. I think that what it is doing as compared to a lot of the stuff on this side of the record is a lot more compelling. We've got track 6, What'd He Say, possibly the weirdest song on the album that is kind of just comes out of nowhere. It's got a really strong beat on this thing, but it's hindered a bit by some really like awful horn samples and just really, really baffling guest vocals for the chorus on this thing. Like, synth pop is kind of a goofy genre, but this is like so far beyond silly for a track on here. It's creative, but it's just real weird and out of left field for this song. This track is kind of just all over the place in that way, and I wouldn't say it's an awful track or anything, but it sure is something, man. Track 7 on the record is Say You're Sorry. Pretty nice saxophone-backed synth part leads this track. With one of the slower songs on the record, it's still a bit up-tempo. I mean, not really a slow song on this record, but this would probably be the slowest. This is not really out of place like the last song is, however, it's just like, really, this song just falls short on memorability. It's kind of just a placeholder for a track, is what it feels like. Not much to offer here. The lyrics are uninteresting for the most part, and really it's just kind of being pulled along with a decent beat. Track 8 is Should Have Known Better. This song has a beat that's really reminiscent of like some early OMD stuff, with some really light piano work over some heavier synths. Once again, a pretty forgettable track here, especially on the lyric side again. This has got very little going for it. I don't know why this ended up on the record. I mean, this is a 9-track album. There's 4 tracks on side A and 5 tracks on side B. If there was any track I would have left off, I would have just removed this one and made this an 8-track album, because it just really... This song adds like nothing. It's incredibly boring, and like the length. This track and the last track were like easily far longer than they needed to be for how uninteresting they were. Track 9 brings it back a little bit with She's Got a Cause. The final track on the record has a really strong beat and lots of great use of sampling. Much more interesting than the previous 2 tracks. Jurgensen's vocals here are a bit more dynamic on this song and a lot more lifelike. There's clearly a lot more going on for this track in the vocal department. The song sounds like way more like the songs on the A side of this record than the B side. Like this song here definitely, I think, was chosen wisely to be a good album closer. I like I've said before, I believe in a strong album finisher track, and this one absolutely fills those shoes well and comfortably. As for final thoughts on the record, I mean, this is a really top-heavy album. The first 4 tracks in this album are really excellent. The production on them is really tight, the writing is solid, and they are groovy and dancey, and they are just good tracks. Side B of the record, it's a little bit too all over the place, and there's a little bit of like a lack of interesting content on side B of this record, save for the first track, which is interesting for the fact that it's kind of just like telling where the band's gonna go, and then the last track for being a actually good and strong track. Honestly, all you really need to listen to on side B for the most part is the last track, She's Got a Cause. Everything else, you can pretty much skip over it. Side A, though, is incredibly solid. I had actually not listened to this record in quite a while, and when I went back to put on side B, it occurred to me, like, I went and cleaned off each side of the record before playing them. When I cleaned off side B, it was just loaded with dust. And now I know why, because side B of this record is just like really hard to get through. Side A, absolutely listen to the first 4 songs on this album and the last track. Those tracks are amazing. The rest here, you can listen to it if you want, but there's really not much going for them. With that being said, I think this is a really great opening album for a band like this. I think that the way that Ministry evolved over the years makes this album a lot more interesting when you just like analyze it under a lens. It is just a weird record for these guys, especially when you view these guys as like the progenitors of modern industrial rock and metal. You know, like, these guys have pioneered so much, and they've started out as a fucking synth pop band. Have you listened to this record? Go ahead and leave a comment, tell me what you think. What should I review next? Thank you so much for watching. I have some more content coming for you, possibly over this weekend, and we will see you next week. I've got a lot of projects I've got working on right now, and I'm hoping that I can get some stuff out to you guys sooner rather than later, because I'm excited to get this stuff done, but I want to make sure that I can get it up in a good quality way that you guys won't hate. So thank you guys so much for watching, and leave a comment, tell me how I'm doing. We'll see you next week.